China has just launched this new SpaceX competitor, and this Starlink, market killer is something that I would not be surprised if Brazil pursues as a Starlink substitute. I would not be surprised if part of what's happening right now with taking out Starlink is an attempt to do either a favor, directly or indirectly, for their new Chinese partners, or to supplant Starlink altogether.
Seja bem-vindo a mais um vídeo do canal. Bom, tá aí. Esse vai ser o tema. Se inscreva, já deixe seu like aí para fortalecer e vamos continuar.
How many people are going to lose internet in Brazil due to this attack on free speech and censorship?
Well, Brazil has 200 million people, and X is the most popular news app in the country, even now after the ban came down, because of how many people are using a VPN, despite the threat of fines if you speak misinformation while using the VPN.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because, part of the problem that Starlink was trying to solve was all the people that live in rural communities throughout the world that don't have internet, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what's going to happen when all these people lose internet and there's no other provider?
Well, there's a very strange, ominous case scenario, which I've talked about a little bit just on my X account, which is that China has just launched this new SpaceX competitor that just recently put its first constellation of its satellite mega project in play. And this Starlink competitor, Starlink, market killer, is something that I would not be surprised if Brazil pursues as a Starlink substitute. Lula hitched his star to China. Bolsonaro was very hostile to Chinese soft power and Chinese investment in Brazil. And Lula, who again was backed by the U.S. State Department, they wanted him to win. They sicked the State Department, the CIA, and the DOD on Bolsonaro to warn him against questioning the election. They didn't do that to Lula. And again, this whole censorship apparatus was set up by the State Department and USAID to kill Bolsonaro's political support. So they wanted Lula to win, and Lula has reversed decades of China hostilities, and immediately, as soon as he got into office, declared that effectively China is the linchpin of Brazil's new economic development plan, that they're going to be a long distance part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, and so they are now hitching their star to China, which means they're going to need they're going to need to do favors for China to do favors in kind. I would not be surprised if part of what's happening right now with taking out Starlink is an attempt to do either a favor, directly or indirectly, for their new Chinese partners, or to supplant Starlink altogether with this new Chinese competitor who is looking to get market reach and capturing, the 10th largest economy in the world would be incredible as a beachhead, not just in Brazil, but also in all of South America. But this also begs very strange questions about why it is the U.S. State Department so vociferously backed Lula when Lula so vociferously backs China.
That's wow. That makes this even more alarming than it already is. With China and all the data collection that they're doing, and so
Bom, esses caras estão debatendo ali, no caso, uma questão muito geopolítica, né? São dois lados hoje no mundo, dois lados que brigam, né, economicamente, China e Estados Unidos ali querendo chegar no topo, e eles estão discutindo ali uma questão de hegemonia e de lado que o Brasil se porta diante dessa possível hegemonia chinesa no futuro, né, que hoje ainda pertence aos Estados Unidos. E o cara questiona ali por que os Estados Unidos apoiou Lula se eles sabem que o Lula apoia a China, né, com BRICS e tudo mais. Todo brasileiro sabe disso. Então, essa é a questão. E parece que a China está lançando um novo serviço de internet que é para concorrer com a Starlink. Então, são esses dois poderes econômicos globais ali disputando a todo momento. A China está atrasada em relação a isso, porque a Starlink, apesar de ser uma empresa privada, ela é americana. E, enfim, o que está em jogo ali é a disputa tecnológica, né? E de controle da informação. O que antes acontecia entre União Soviética e Estados Unidos, hoje claramente a gente tem uma disputa entre China e Estados Unidos. Bom, vamos continuar com o vídeo aí, vamos ver o que esse pessoal está falando.
Do you think we're going to start to see this, the Chinese? What's the name of the company?
I forget. Everyone can look it up. If you just literally Google China Starlink competitor, you'll see. I don't want to butcher it, but I think it actually even sounds similar to Starlink. But
So if they get more countries to do this, they're all going to start using Chinese internet.
yeah, it's the Huawei strategy, which with capturing the IT and the 5G market.
So that's how bad the U.S. wants to censor us. Is our number? They would rather have the entire world on Chinese internet. Our number one adversary,
Well, it's
rather
very, right.
than let people have free speech and use Starlink and X.
It's very strange at a moment when Tim Walz was just selected as the vice presidential candidate of our current vice president running for office, meaning if Kamala were to win and something were to happen to her, Tim Walz would be the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief. And Tim Walz has been to China over 30 times. He's been, there's an article from him in college where he said he brought so many gifts home from China, he couldn't carry them all. He's frequently speaking at these Friends of China events, and his whole since college has been tied to these Chinese networks 7 ways from Sunday. And then you have the State Department literally sicking the CIA, the State Department, USAID, the Pentagon, and a 100 U.S. government-funded soft power swarm army influence institutions in order to pull the strings to soft rig the election for Lula, when Lula pre-announced, how China was going to be the linchpin of the strategy, has completely reversed Brazil's diplomatic posture and giving them everything, and is now kicking out Starlink at the exact moment that Starlink's Chinese competitor comes online. It makes you wonder if the blob's diplomatic apparatus that we use both to influence foreign countries and also as a department of dirty tricks against our own citizens, if there's an element of it not being just organic evil.
Let's talk about the Atlantic Council Cooperative Agreement.
Yeah, so this institution we've now mentioned a couple times. This is the Atlantic Council is NATO's think tank, is what it's known as. Mm-hmm. And but that's really the best way to understand it, is it's sort of the...
Bom, aí já é outro assunto, mas eu vou deixar o vídeo correr para criar todo um contexto ali. Eles estão debatendo mais a política interna deles, né? A política americana interna. Se o governo dos Estados Unidos age diplomaticamente pensando nos interesses do país ou pensando em outras coisas. Pelo jeito, é um assunto que eles estão achando que tem gente infiltrada lá dentro, agindo a favor, inclusive, da China, né? Algumas ações, é aquela coisa, né? Comunista versus capitalismo e assim por diante. Vamos continuar aí para terminar o vídeo e entregar para vocês mais esse material.
Plausibly deniable civilian consensus building apparatus for NATO's geopolitical agenda. So if the U.S. military and the UK Foreign Office and Brussels and the CIA want to do something in a certain region, but the civilians there need to pass laws to make that happen, or it would help the effort, or the different civil society players, can help in some way. It's intermediated by the Atlantic Council. This is why the Atlantic Council gets annual funding every year from 11 different U.S. government agencies, including the U.S. Department of State, the Department of Defense, including separate allocations from the Army, the Marines, and the Navy, is CIA cutouts like the National Endowment for Democracy, and it has 7 CIA directors currently, as we speak, on its board of directors. I say this a lot, but a lot of people don't even know that 7 former number one heads of the CIA are still alive, let alone all clustered on the board of a single entity that also happens to be this primary coordinator of internet censorship in all over the world, effectively, from the U.S. to Brazil to the EU.
No matter where you're watching Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.
Bom, é isso. Deixe sua curtida, seu comentário, se inscreva no canal, igual ele falou aí. Parece assim, a impressão que me dá é que são opiniões políticas, é a geopolítica, debates geopolíticos. A gente nunca sabe o que estão nas camadas superiores, né? Então a gente fica sempre nesse debate aí. O que você acha? É isso que eu quero saber. Valeu, pessoal. Até o próximo vídeo. Até.